I began regular pioneering in the Pasadena, California congregation after I graduated from high school in 1962.
And how did that lead to Bethel service?
I served in a few other areas where the need was great, in New Mexico, Northern California, a special pioneer assignment in Iowa, and then a small congregation in Mississippi. Tom was a Brooklyn Bethelite, and he came down to Mississippi to dedicate a Kingdom Hall in May 1981. We met. 7 months later, we were married, and we were accepted to serve as a couple at Bethel.
Now, is there a particular experience you'd like to share with us?
When I was special pioneering in Iowa, I married a brother who was a pioneer and then became an elder, and so I continued in the congregation as a regular pioneer. After several years, he became an apostate, and he tried to encourage me to go with him, but I refused. The elders made great efforts to help him to recover, but he was persistent in carrying out his course. So in time, he separated from me and ended the marriage. But I felt Jehovah's support in so many ways. One in particular was a couple who would call me often, and they would have me to their home, and they never wanted me to feel alone. Then another blessing came later when I moved to Mississippi, and I became partners with a sister who was 20 years older than me. She had been in the 7th class of Gilead, and she had been special pioneering for 30 years. So you can imagine she was a tremendous help to me. More blessings came later when I married Tom and began serving at Bethel. So feeling Jehovah's support at a difficult time and experiencing his blessings is unforgettable.
Sister Cheiky, thank you so much for sharing that experience with us.
Yes, thank you, Sister Cheiky, for that. Wow. Again, what an interesting insight into what this organization is all about. In a way, I suppose it's good that they're ignoring the rank and file. They're ignoring ordinary members of the religion and focusing purely on those that made it high up the ladder, those who married into positions of prominence, which is what we're getting here, interviews with wives of branch committee members, because this is showing how fanatical you need to be to last in this organization and indeed prosper in it, so that you can get these privileges of service. Although I'm not sure simply being married to, a high-ranking Bethelite is necessarily a privilege, but I'm sure that's how they see it. Anyway, talk about fanaticism. Oh yes, my husband became an apostate, and he tried to encourage me to go with him. Well, how is that in any way surprising, Sister Cheiky? You were married to someone who came to the conclusion that the religion that you were both in was not true. And you were expecting him to not try and persuade you. You were expecting him to think, oh, I'll let my wife continue wasting her time, lots and lots of time, because she was a special pioneer. I'll continue letting her spend over 100 hours per month. I think 120, 130 hours per month, recruiting people into an organization that isn't true. That's what you expected your husband to do, was it, Sister Cheiky? Is it not more likely, and indeed understandable, if he loved you, that he would try to persuade you, that he would present you with reasons as to why he had taken this dramatic step of apostatizing from his religion? Isn't that totally understandable? Despite how you're trying to frame it. Oh, he tried to encourage me to go with him. He loved you, or at least he loved you enough to try and share his revelations with you, or try to help you understand that you were being used and exploited to quite some degree as a special pioneer. Thankfully, I refused. I wouldn't listen to any of his reasons. I refused to see what the other side of the argument is regarding my religion. I stuck my head in the sand like a loyal follower of Jehovah's organization and refused to see the other side of the argument. So I did good.
The elders made great efforts to help him to recover, but he was persistent in carrying out his course. So in time, he separated from me and ended the marriage.
The elders tried and failed to help him recover, but he was persistent in carrying out his course. So in time, he separated from me and ended the marriage. I'm sure there is a lot more to this story. Goodness knows what Sister Cheiky's ex-husband would have to say if we could have him on the channel, if he could recount how all of this went down. But is it just me, viewers, or is he being painted as some kind of villain here? There's no shame, frankly, in separating from someone or ending your marriage with someone who views you as worthy of destruction at Armageddon if you don't change your ways. It's sad when it happens. I mean, in my own case, I was very, very fortunate because when I realized I was in a cult, my wife obviously didn't feel the same way at first, but in time, because she isn't the sort that appreciates being lied to, and she honestly wanted to understand what my motives were, in time she ended up waking up herself. So fortunately it worked out well for me, but I can imagine in many other situations where one marriage mate wakes up to the fact that they're in a cult, it doesn't go so well and the marriage does end up fracturing. I just don't think it's fair that the way the story is told, Jehovah's Witnesses, millions of Jehovah's Witnesses will be thinking, oh, poor Sister Cheiky, her husband will probably have been this awful, awful person. And yes, he separated from her, he ended the marriage. Well, what was he supposed to do? Stay in a marriage, married to someone who thought that he was worthy of death at Armageddon? It seems that there were other people involved as well, perhaps interfering, because Sister Cheiky relates.
Was a couple who would call me often and they would have me to their home and they never wanted me to feel alone.
One couple who would call me often, I'm sure not just to talk about the weather, and they would have me to their home. They never wanted me to feel alone. So she was getting love bombed by a couple in her congregation while she was going through marital problems. She was receiving this manipulation to reinforce the way she was feeling and reinforce her decision to not look at the other side of the argument. I just find it very disingenuous and one-sided, all of this. I'd like to hear what her ex-husband has to say about all this. And isn't it interesting as well that after this marriage, she then jumps into a marriage with the branch committee member, or the chap who's now a branch committee member, who she marries having only known him for 7 months.
In May 1981, we met. 7 months later, we were married, and we were accepted to serve as a couple at Bethel.
That's a bit hasty, don't you think? Are we really encouraging young Jehovah's Witness couples to get married after only 7 months? The message here seems to be, as long as he's spiritual, as long as he's a Bethelite, as long as he's got some pedigree in Jehovah's organization, yeah, sure, marry them after 7 months. If it's anyone else, probably spend a bit more time first. Honestly, how is this a healthy approach to marriage? How is this a good message to be sending out to millions of Jehovah's Witnesses, that your partner is to be demonized if he ever stops believing, and that there's nothing wrong, it's perfectly normal to marry someone after only 7 months if he's spiritual enough?